All right, we're live.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks, Dan. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. It's Monday, February 13th, 2023, and this is a regular meeting of the Weston Board of Education. I believe we have a quorum, which we do. Would someone like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance? Mark, after the Super Bowl, we need someone with an athletic background to lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
I will start it, sure.
There we go.
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
to the flag
to the flag
of the United States of
of the United
America,
States of America,
and to the republic for
to the
which it
republic
stands,
which stands one nation,
under
under
God,
God.
liberty, and justice for all.
Terrific. Thank you. Not quite sure you were Chris Stapleton, but that's okay.
He definitely sounded better than I did.
I can assure you, better than I would ever possibly do it. So the next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of a series of meetings on January 17th of 2023 of our regular meeting. Are there any changes or comments that anyone wants to make? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve?
I move that the Weston Board of Education approve the January 17th, 2023 Weston Board of Education meeting minutes.
In a second?
A second.
Great. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye, Steve.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Sharon.
I was not present, so I think I should abstain.
I abstain as well.
Okay,
Hi, Peter.
I think that's it. Any opposed? Minutes from January 17th, 2023 are approved. Meeting minutes from January 19th, 2023. Public forum number 2. Any
I
changes to,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. No,
I jumped the gun, Steve.
No, go for it.
Well, did anyone have any changes? It was a
Yeah.
short meeting, but no. Okay, move that the Weston Board of Education approve the January 19th, 2023 Weston Board of Education Public Forum number 2 minutes.
A second. Did we lose Steve?
Oh,
I think we did.
okay, well, let's see, we can carry on with the vote, I think.
Melissa, you want to take this?
Yeah, all in favor?
All,
I'm Melissa.
hi, Sharon.
Hi, Bernadette.
Hi, David.
I have to abstain. I missed that one.
You, okay, sure. Will that, anyone object? Okay, then the motion carries. We have another meeting minutes. And just let me know if Steve gets back on. We have another meeting minutes from the January 23rd, 2023 Weston Board of Education workshop. Did anybody have any changes to those minutes? Okay, can I have a motion?
That was January 20. Oh, go ahead.
I move that the Weston Board of Education approve the January 23rd, 2023 Board of Education workshop.
Great, thanks, Dave. Can I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Sharon. All those in favor? I'm Melissa.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Chad.
I abstain.
Hi, David.
Was that?
Okay,
Hi, Peter.
great. Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. So the minutes from January 23rd workshop pass. We have 2 more meeting minutes to approve. The next one are the meeting minutes from the January 24th, 2023 Weston Board of Education executive session. Does anybody have anything to comment on or any revisions to those minutes? Okay, can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the January 24th, 2023 Weston Board of Education executive session meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you, David. Can I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Sharon. All in favor? I'm Melissa.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Chad.
Hi, Bernadette.
Hi, David.
I have to abstain on that one too, since I'm a state.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Oh,
Does anyone
Apologies,
oppose?
I just got dropped out. Sorry.
No worries, Steve. We just went ahead and kept approving because we had a
Yes,
quorum.
I saw that.
Okay, so, does anyone oppose to those January 24th executive session? Okay, then that motion carries. We just have one left. I'll finish it, Steve, since I'm on a roll
Please.
now. The meeting minutes from the January 24th, 2023 Weston Board of Education Budget Approval Adoption Meeting. Does anyone have anything to add to those minutes? No, okay. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the January 24th, 2023 Weston Board of Education fiscal year 24 budget approval adoption meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Can I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Sharon. All in favor? I'm
Hi,
Melissa.
Steve.
Hi, Chad.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Bernadette.
Hi, David.
Hi, Peter.
Okay, anyone opposed? All right, the motion carries. That'll do it for the meeting minutes.
Terrific. So item number 4 is the Student Board of Education representative comments. Emma, Josh?
Hi. So as we said last time, we've been running our Super Bowl food drive, which has been doing pretty well at the high school, and we also extended it to WIS and the middle school. So hopefully the combination of those 3 schools will be good for person to person, which is where we're donating it. I also just wanted to bring awareness, I guess, to one of the classes in our school that's called Sustainable Living. That's currently adding more recycling bins and trash bins in the high school that are like helping to sort out the recycling, so more actually gets recycled, and are also pushing to get composting into the high school, which I thought was interesting.
And then, like always, we have a little sports update as we approach the end of the winter season. We're like approaching playoff time. Our boys basketball team has made both states and SWCs. I think those tournaments start within the next month. And then state opens for track this weekend. We had Class M states last weekend. And I think swim and dive is coming up. I don't know exactly when, but that's really about it. Not too much to say in regards to sports this month.
That's rather exciting.
Josh, what about wrestling?
Mark, you have it?
I don't know when states are for wrestling.
SWCs were yesterday. We had 3
Oh.
podium winners, 2/3 and 1/4. 4, there was 4? Who was the 4th? I only had 3 there.
There were 2/3 and 2/4.
Oh, I only saw the 2/3 and 2.
And states are this coming weekend, Friday and Saturday at Jonathan Law in Milford.
Yes, way to go. It was very exciting. I was there.
I think you know something about wrestling, don't you, Tina?
That's a wrestling game.
Josh, Emma, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Like to move on to item number 5, public comment.
Okay. For those of you who are attendees in the waiting room, if you are interested in speaking a public comment, please take a look at the bottom of your screen and you are going to see a button that says raise your hand. If you're interested in speaking, please click that button. I will see your hand raised and I will promote you to a panelist. Okay, right now we have one individual, Kate Rowe. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. You're going to see something come across your screen that's going to tell you that you're being promoted. Please click on the button to accept it. And once you get promoted to a panelist, please state your name and state your street address and turn your screen on, please. And I'll give her a few minutes. Okay, Kate, you're now a panelist. If you could unmute yourself and show your camera and state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Kate Rowe and I live at 38 High Noon.
Welcome, Kate.
You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
I'm going to speak really fast. I'm sorry. That's all
That's
I can
okay.
do to keep it down to 5. I didn't know I was going to be on camera. Shoot. The first area of concern I want to address is the lack of presuming competence for disabled students in district and the grave consequences. My daughter is an autistic non-speaker. She has neurological motor differences. Unfortunately, the antiquated myth that non-speakers have language or cognitive issues, despite years of better information, has been upheld and pervades in Weston District. My daughter worked hard and gained the motor control during COVID voluntary distance learning to become a typer on a QWERTY keyboard, where she types slowly with her right index finger while supported by a partner through her motor planning and regulation in order to initiate and sustain purposeful movement. With non-speaking autistics and other disabled people as my mentors, for years I advocated to presume competence and for my daughter to be included and taught grade level curriculum, and warned regularly that if they did not presume competence, otherwise known as the least dangerous presumption, you would learn directly from her years down the road of the damage. This was predictable and this was predicted. Despite my efforts and other advocates we brought to the table, my daughter was mistreated and traumatized by low expectations and people regularly speaking in front of her like she couldn't understand or feel human emotions if she did. When I first began reporting back to district about my daughter's typing success, the general response from district was that I was not believed. I was, quote, delusional. Multiple people in district began making suggestions about me and my character, insinuating that I was making up what my daughter was typing. Devastated enough to be learning from our daughter about various horrors she went through over the years and trying to help her through that and processing that as parents, as a family, we were further victimized by insinuations that we were delusional and fabricating the acts against her. Once she finally triumphantly acquired her voice, she was not listened to. She was not listened to in advocating for her communication preferences and needs and rights constantly for a full year, which left her essentially voiceless and unable to access her education. In response to her advocating about her lived experience, we'd get replies like, quote, they see things differently. We had no replies for things like telling school the reason she kept going to close windows, which teachers called, quote, maladaptive behavior, she said, was to keep the bad guys out. And she had to open the blinds to look out for danger because during school shooter drills at Hurlbut, instead of being careful not to traumatize her during such drills, as teachers are for non-disabled students, instead teachers told paraprofessionals they had to keep her quiet or she'd endanger them all in front of her. So she had to close windows and open blinds because she was, quote, terrified of being the reason one of my friends gets killed. That's just one example of what's going on through her mind in the classroom while people point fingers at her behavior and use it to exclude her and push her out. I reported that to the district and heard nothing back. That's one of 100 stories, just daily harms. But it's been me speaking out, trying to silence me. That's been what the district is concerned about. Calling my husband and threatening us with legal recourse if I didn't take down social media posts. Telling me my behavior of emailing other parents privately has to stop. And we believe, in an attempt to silence our advocacy, calling DCF on us and reporting me for neglect. After a Zoom call one day where we left off saying we were going to speak to our attorney, I later picked up my crying daughter, and when I pulled over in the high school lot to ask her what happened, she typed that, quote, a boy said retards shouldn't get to go to school. I emailed school to report it and how distraught she was. Someone told me to call 211. I said, not necessary, we got this. And the next thing I know, I'm reported to DCF for neglect. And to give people information on what happens when you report suspected abuse or neglect to DCF, home visits ensue. In those home visits, you sit down with your child present and answer questions like, do you have drugs or firearms in your home? And should the child be removed from the home, do you have a preference for where they go? It is traumatizing. Whether it's used as retaliation to escape liability or whatever the reason one is calling, people need to know it's a traumatizing experience for a young child. And we continue to feel re-victimized and re-traumatized again and again by this district. And it has been reported to us that other families are petrified of coming forward with complaints and advocating strongly for their child because a DCF call threatens their profession, their livelihood, and the ability to support their families. And that's how much trust some families have being fairly treated in Weston right now. Excuse me. Footnote, the DCF agent told me that the district told her I had an autism diagnosis. Seems aggressive to me and unethical. And was it to imply that autism equals suspicion? And should we be concerned that the person relaying this is a part of the system that educates dozens of autistic students each year if they think autism equals bad? Side note, by the way, being an autistic parent makes me an awesome mother and advocate for my autistic child. After these visits, my daughter woke up at midnight for weeks crying and then typing that when the lady asked where she'd go if she were taken away, it got her terrified of me dying. And that's what's going to happen, and asking what's going to happen to her without me. And I just want to know, it's so traumatizing to an extremely vulnerable disabled child in particular who needs and will need one-to-one support for her lifetime for daily living. Medical advocacy, communication, to think about being taken from her mother. If you didn't before, I hope you think about it now, because it is cruel. I mean, it's so much of what my daughter and we as a family have been subjected to by this district feels like just utter.
I'm sorry, Ms. Rowe, your 5 minutes are
Just-
up.
If you just let her go on, please.
Okay, that's fine.
My 3 questions. So my questions are, I want to know, 1, what's happening to the district to educate all staff, educators, and administrators on the critical need for presuming competence of all students and not speaking in front of disabled students as if they couldn't feel or understand or like they're puppies, as my daughter often said she felt like. Non-disabled peers are learning from adults how to treat disabled students, and it's critical for the safety of our disabled students. 2, has there been any discussion on the professional way to answer authorities during investigations with what a person knows or doesn't know about the allegation and not answering with their feelings about the parents and insinuating their own concocted allegations? And 3, finally, have there been any discussions or warnings on not abusing DCF against parents who advocate for their children? And has there been any discussion on the breakdown of trust and collaboration between families and the district? Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. We'll take up your comments and your concerns amongst the board, and we will come back to you with a response. But thank you for coming forward this evening.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Jody?
I'm just going to move Kate back to an attendee for the moment. And is there anybody else that is in the waiting room for attendees that would like to speak? If so, please scroll down to the bottom of the screen and raise your hand. I don't see anybody else raising their hand right now, so I believe they're just viewing from the webinar. We can continue.
Great. Thank you very much, Jody.
You're welcome.
Item number 6 is recognition. It's a discussion and a vote to accept a donation of sports equipment to the Weston High School, which has a value of $80,000. Mark
Yes.
is,
Yeah, Mark Berkowitz, I asked to be here, the athletic director. Both he and Principal Ward are thrilled to bring forth this amazing gift. Mr. Berkowitz.
Yeah, we are very fortunate to have been offered these items. There's a personal gym training facility in Westport that is closing. That happens to be run by a parent of students who came through Weston Public Schools. And they reached out to us to ask if we would be interested in the equipment because they are closing and moving and are not taking any of the equipment with them. And we did a site visit to the gym to look at the equipment, and it's in great shape. And we're really excited to be able to revamp our current fitness room and also use some of the equipment over at the middle school in order to take this donation if it's accepted.
it's terrific. Are there questions from the board? Sounds very exciting.
I don't have
It's
any.
extremely
questions.
generous of the family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
extremely generous.
Yeah.
Extremely, and 80,000 is probably a low ball number too. It's a lot of equipment and a lot of really expensive equipment that we would otherwise not have access to, so.
That's exciting. When do we think we're going to be able to have it installed, Mark?
We're getting a quote right now. The company that does our regular maintenance in our fitness room is giving us a quote on disassembling, moving, and reassembling. And I know that Chuck Carboni in our facilities department also has thoughts on how we could make this work, Mike Del Mastro as well, with Phil's help. So we're working those logistics out. Obviously, we're waiting for it to be accepted, and then we'll work on finalizing a date with this family. It's looking like it's going to be end of May, June-ish. Before they're done with it, and you know, he'd be happy to give us to us sooner if we really needed it, but if they're still using it, we'll wait until they're more leaving and take it then, and we're just excited.
And do we have the space for it, given what's there now, or?
We don't have the space for all of it, and that's part of what is why it will take a little while is we have to look at the logistics of what's coming, what we have, which is better, and then deciding what we'll do with the equipment that we do have. And the discussion so far has been to reach out to some schools around us and let them benefit from our good fortune as well, and try to help out some of the area schools.
That's terrific.
As a son who
Are there-
uses the weight room all the time, I can tell you he'll be very excited by this.
Yeah.
It'll help all of our teams too.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and just as an aside, I mean, the community has been very, very generous to one of the high schools in Bridgeport because of Dawn's activities. So I'm sure that whatever we can't utilize, you know, we can offer up to some of the schools in the area. It's just terrific. Are there other questions or comments you'd like to make? Can I have a motion to approve a donation of sports equipment to the Weston High School in the amount of $80,000?
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the donation of sports equipment to Weston High School, which has a value of $80,000.
In a second.
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Hi, Chad.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Bernadette.
I'm Melissa.
Hi, David.
Hi, Steve. Okay. Any opposed? I don't think so. Motion approved. That's great. Terrific.
Thank you very much.
And on to new business. Item number 7A is a consent agenda on new hires, resignations, retirements, and transfers. Lisa?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Steve. We have two items on our consent agenda that was prepared by Ms. Kavanaugh, our Human Resources Director. The first is that there is a retirement as of March 15th. Lois Miller, who is currently part-time at Hurlburt Elementary School health and PE teacher, will be retiring after 35 plus years of service to the Weston Public Schools. So we certainly wish her well in her retirement. Resignations. This is a little bit bittersweet. Terry Kavanaugh, our Director of Human Resources, is resigning from the Weston Public Schools effective March 8th. Terry has taken a position in another Connecticut school district, and we certainly wish her well and are thankful for her contributions to our HR department and the functioning of HR in our district.
That's
Eh,
Teresa. Are
I'm
you
sorry, go ahead.
on? Is Teresa on the phone or on the call? Sorry.
She's on the phone.
Teresa, you're not on my screen. Sorry. I was surprised to see this today, and I have to say that I've very much enjoyed working with you, and I am sure your talents are going to be missed by the district. So good luck, though, in your new position. Hopefully, it's going to be. Hope you'll have lots of success there. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I also wanted to say, Terry, I was sad to see this. I think, you know, the things that you've done in your even short tenure here will have lasting impact. I mean, I think some of the systems and processes you've put in place have made a materially positive impact on the Weston Public Schools. And we're really sad to see you go. I hope you think back on us fondly, and I wish you lots of success in the future.
Thank you very much. I most definitely will.
That's great. Any other comments or questions? Should we move on to 7B? Weston Board.
Can I just get a motion for that before we move on?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize there needed an emotion.
Yes, thank you.
A motion to approve the retirement and resignations that Lisa outlined.
Yes, I
Motion.
move that. Yep, I move that the Weston Board of Education accept the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Hi,
I'm
Sharon.
I'm Melissa.
Hi, Chad.
I Bernadette.
Hi, David.
And Peter.
Hi, Steve. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Item number 7B is the Weston Board of Education policies, regulations, and bylaws of first read. Lisa?
Thank you, Steve. We have for first read policy 5136, which is use of private technology devices by students. This is actually a slight, tweak, and I would ask Mr. DeVito, our Director of Digital Learning and Technology, to explain the tweak. Dan?
Yeah, sure. So the existing policy we have is from 2020. This is just an update for just some additional wording under the definition of privately owned technological devices to specifically say smartwatches and other wearable technology. We have an influx, as many school districts across the country have, of Apple Watches and Samsung watches coming in. So although the current policy covers the use of smartwatches, we just want to make it more explicit in the policy itself.
Thank you, Dan. I don't know if there are any questions.
I just wanted to point out that the policy also extends the use of these devices in the event of remote learning too. So we have that change as well, just to cover ourselves.
Yeah.
Should be good on that path.
Dan, question, is this essentially the same policy as we've had in the past, but it just expands to watches? It seems like that's what you're saying. I just want to confirm that's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing. It just adds the actual term smartwatches and other wearable tech under the definition of personal technological devices. So it's the same exact policy, like Melissa said, other than some of the definitions of remote learning, but it's essentially the same policy, just updated for that.
Got it.
I have a couple of questions which sort of go in line with questions I had last time on a different policy that we looked at. I don't see anything, I see kind of a very broad ability for the administration to search privately owned devices, but I see no wording about notice to a parent or guardian, when that should happen, if it's going to happen, does it happen first?
David, I would say to you, in regard to any kind of search, we fall under the in locus parentis. So putting technology aside, if we need to search a child's backpack or something like that, that search is conducted. The parent is informed, but we do not ask permission. It would be the same thing here.
Okay, is there any sort of documentation that occurs before a search that would be documented what it is that you're searching for?
No, there is no documentation. For example, if we bring in a student and we suspect that there is an illegal substance in the student's bag, we, tell the student, we, empty your bag. We believe that, do you have whatever it could be, a vape pen, marijuana, etc. And that's what the student does. There's no written form that's given beforehand. Again, we fall under the parents entrust their children to us. We call and certainly inform the parents and discuss it, but there's no, pre-discussion, I guess I would say, because that would adversely impact what we need to do moving forward.
Yeah, the basis of my question sort of was more along the lines of, if you have probable cause to search, is it documented before the search, not with the student or anybody else? Is it documented internally what it is you're searching for? Because the wording that says any such search shall be reasonably related to the objectiveness of the search.
That is correct.
Yeah, so I just,
It's not, it is our custom if we would write up an investigation report or if we would put something, to document it, it would be done afterwards. We would not do it before. We bring someone in, we want to look at something, we explain why, we most likely have the children's advocate there that is the counselor. We proceed, we call and inform the parents, and then if there's any need to document, then we document after that.
Okay. My just general feedback is I feel like this policy is too broad insofar as search. If I'm the only one that feels that way, then my comments are on record.
Are you talking, just so I'm clear, specifically about search of this search that has to do with technology?
Yeah, strictly about, I'm a big proponent of purpose, right? Or search with a purpose, right? And my concern is, and I'm not suggesting this can happen, but I always, I grew up in an environment where you set expectations ahead of time, and therefore what the rules are, what the policies are. So my concern is the policy is broad insofar as what the search, or it's not documented what the search is, and therefore I'm not saying this would happen, but it could happen. Does it become a bit of a fishing expedition? And I don't see protections for that.
Sorry, David, to cut you off. One of the things, and I can get this information too in InfoSnap. So the yearly agreements that parents have to sign online in InfoSnap. I'm pretty sure one of the documents is regarding electronic devices and the district's consenting to the district searching the devices. So I will look at specifically what's written in there, if it gives any kind of a definition that you're looking for as to when to search and what cause for search.
Yeah, my concern is solely about personally owned. I am a full proponent and supporter of, if the district issues a piece of equipment to a student, that equipment belongs to the district, and the district can search it up and down, left and right, and anything they want. My concern simply is a personal, because we're talking about a personally owned device. I have concerns that it's overly broad.
I understand. I understand where you're coming from, David. I would say that it would be my expectation that the administrators not go on fishing expeditions. And that, because yes, I mean, there has to be a purpose or a reason behind what we're asking for. The other thing though is that if a child brings a personal device to school and is sharing things on that personal device with other children, it could be at recess, it could be in the hallway, it could be in the classroom, that can consist of cyberbullying or creating a negative, hostile environment for the school, then we have every right to bring that child in. And in most cases, we just say, what's on your phone? And we ask to see it. It's that kind of thing, 9 times out of 10. But, I don't want anyone to think that we just take phones, start confiscating them and searching through pictures. There has to be a purpose and a reason behind it. That is, comes out later in any kind of a documentation. If there is a documentation of the incident, if a letter is sent home to parents after speaking to parents of the clear expectations that we have in the district regarding this, if it's related, for example, to a bullying situation, the policy is stated, it's very clearly explained. So I appreciate what you're coming from, but I can say in practice, my experience has been that there's been no fishing expeditions. However, we administrators do ask, this is what we're hearing. Do you have this on your phone?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Lisa's saying, the policy itself, the language of the policy says that a search will happen only if there are reasonable grounds for suspecting that the search will turn up evidence that the student has violated or is violating a rule or policy of the school. So, there's a reasonableness that would apply to any search. And then depending on what's found, it would be turned over. It would depend on what the violation was, whether it violated a school policy or school rule. So I do think there are safeguards in the policy.
I'll
to
just-
prevent things like a fishing expedition that
No,
clearly.
I don't, I think the term fishing expedition is probably a bit strong, but I did say, which I mean, I don't not trust any of the educators, administrators. I just don't have a better word right now, but it certainly would make me more comfortable if there was something documented internally before the search where an administrator says, we have reason to believe on the device is X or Y, and therefore we're going to search the device for that.
Well, whether it's documented or not, they would still have the reasonableness standard that would apply.
And it
If
would
that makes you
most
feel
certainly be documented after, quite frankly. It would be an internal document, but during the investigation, and I mean, there are times where, we need to act quickly and we're not going to stop and fill out any documentation as we continue. Most likely how these things play out is I usually get a phone call that's from one of the principals that says, this happened, this is what we did, this is how we're handling it, and this is what we're documenting. And that usually occurs within hours of the incident. It's not like the next day. We're pretty on top of these things because, if it gets to that level and it's seriously affecting, oftentimes it's a climate issue in the school, then we need to address it. The other thing is please remember, I want to reiterate, we reviewed this policy at our monthly administrative team meeting. We review all policies that are sort of in the queue coming up for first read, and we talk through some of the very issues you're talking about to make sure that we are all on the same page with the actual application of the policy. It is my expectation that there be a reasonable that it be reasonable if there was going to be any kind of search conducted.
Part of the challenge that this document brings up is that the difference with searching a backpack for some substance and searching a cell phone, which now essentially can have like every piece of information in the universe practically. It's a very different thing. The other point about this is like on some level, we probably have to grapple at some point with the fact that personal cell devices in schools in general are just hugely problematic. And we wouldn't have to search them if they weren't there. So I don't suggest that we can try to tackle that question right now. But if you look at what's happening in other districts around the country, the question of if devices or even personal devices should even be on premises is probably a question that as an organizational body, we're going to have to assess and grapple with at some point. So I don't think that necessarily is in this document, but part of the challenge that David is bringing up is because these devices can contain like everything in the world, not just what would be in a backpack. So I hear your point about the concern of the document. I'm not sure what the solution is, but students with cell phones, personal devices on campus, it's a challenge we'll have to figure out.
Other comments or questions from the board? Great. Shall we move on to 7B? 7B1. I'm looking at 7C. Pupil personnel services and special education update.
Yes. At this time, I would like to ask the Director of Special Education and Pupil Personnel Services, Tracy Edwards, to share some of our latest updates. I wanted to also take this opportunity to say that beginning this year, Ms. Edwards has spearheaded an effort to host parent informational meetings that are all posted on the district website if you missed any. Starting in September, we had one that she ran on special education and PPS overview that you heard about. We had another one in November specifically about the new program that the state uses, as well as learning disability guidelines. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tracy to talk about our latest meeting that is again posted on the website and some other highlights. Tracy?
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Good evening, everybody. We've talked a lot about staffing this year, so I just wanted to provide a brief update about that. Approximately once a month, I meet with the area directors, and the very first topic that was brought up by some of my colleagues was staffing. It is a challenge that is impacting all of our comparison districts. As you know from our January meeting, we have been fortunate to have many wonderful new people join our team over the last few weeks. And for any open positions, we're continuing to actively recruit, screen, and interview to get people into those seats. To dovetail on what Lisa said about the parent meetings this year, our most recent parent meeting was at the end of January. We were extremely fortunate to have our transition coordinator, Eric Brudvig, share with families information about post-secondary transition, which is a very complex and stressful time for families, and he did a fantastic job. The presentation was well attended, and it is posted on the district website for anyone who wasn't able to join at that time. We are also actively planning a March meeting. I've had some feedback from families that the new CT SEDS IEP looks structurally different from the IEP families have received in our former IEP system. So we'll be talking about how to read an IEP in CT SEDS. In terms of other updates, we held the ELC lottery in January. That was also a positive experience. We were able to accept all interested families. Families that express interest moving forward will likely be on a wait list, but we're continuing, of course, to accept applications in case families decide to pursue other plans for next year. And then my last update is we have just posted all of the building level safe school climate plans on the individual school websites. So these plans outline the strategies that we take in each of our buildings to promote a positive and productive environment in our schools. And I think at some point, Dan is going to show families how to access those plans.
Okay, everyone see the screen, yeah? So under each screen, under each school, under school information, you'll see, the school climate safety plan. So you click on that and it will automatically load up into the new, into the plan. Hang on 1 second. If you go to each specific school, it will always be at the bottom under school information. Safe school climate plan and the high school under school information, safe school climate plan.
Thank you, Dan.
Are there questions or comments directed to Tracy?
Tracy, just a quick question. I saw today when I was dropping my son off at school, the kindergarten enrollment signs and all that. And I know that people are moving forward right now. How are we looking? Has there been any change since when you were doing your budgeting earlier with the preschool? Have there been any more identifications? Are we still on track to stay with the number of sections that we've budgeted?
Yeah, great question. As of today, we are still on track with the sections that were budgeted. We do monitor those numbers closely, but I'm not recommending any changes right now.
Okay.
Tracy, this is more of just a kind of an open, like a la carte, not a la carte, I don't know, whatever, open question or invitation. If you have ideas of things that we as a community can do to help with this retention, I, for one, am curious about how to do so. I know that it's a struggle with school districts across the country right now, is keeping and attracting and retaining people. So it seems like Weston's a marvelous, marvelous place to live and to teach. And I'm just sort of making the invitation that if there are things that we can do to try to make it an even more attractive destination, given the like massive turnover we're seeing across every level of educational professional life. If there's things we can do, let us know, because it's a challenge everyone's facing, not just here.
Yes, I appreciate that. I think part of it is communication. Some of our most wonderful new additions have come to us by way of recommendations from, colleagues within the Weston Public School community. So we're working hard on it. You're right. It is not just a local issue. It is a nationwide issue, particularly in the area of special education. But I appreciate the support.
I'll second that as well. And Tracy's absolutely correct. It is much about, telling your friends and connections. And, that's really helpful when people are looking at positions they want to take, what's coming up, and talking about Weston. So they can read about it. They can watch our board meetings, but it's really important to have people in the Weston school systems kind of talk about it. So I appreciate that, Chad. That's wonderful.
Other comments? Thanks, Tracy. Phil, can we move on to the finance and operations update?
Sure. Hello, everyone. As of January, we're seeing a month-over-month reduction to our end-of-year projected balance. We're seeing a reduction of approximately $206,000. I'm just going to go over the quick highlights as to the major drivers of that. We have some changes in salaries, professional services, supplies, and equipment. In the areas of salaries, where we do have unfilled positions in the SPED PPS department, we have transferred some funds to grants, we have turnover savings, and we have workers' compensation reimbursement. Because of the difficulties that we've been having in filling some open position, we will be using third-party providers for the remainder of the school year for continuity of service. So we do anticipate, or we do have a placeholder of approximately $82,000 for those services. In addition, we are seeing a trend of increase in legal fees in the district line, not in the spread line, but the district line. So we are proposing, we have a placeholder of $30,000 to be over in legal fees. For supplies, we do to mitigate the FY24 budget, we will be spending $293,000 approximately. And for equipment, we will be purchasing some equipment for the new grounds position that will be resuming beginning hopefully in March. And by the way, we have started to interviews for those positions as of today. As it relates to the Internal Services Fund, the fund is trending as expected. And those are the highlights of for January.
Are there questions of Phil? Can I have a vote to approve the 2022 financial report as presented today?
I move that
motion?
I move that the Weston Board of Education approve the 7th 2022 financial report.
There a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye, Sharon.
I'm Melissa.
Chad.
Hi, Bernadette.
Hi, David.
And Peter.
Hi, Steve. Motion's approved. Item number 7E, Weston's winter progress towards continued success and improvement.
Yes, thank you. Well, as promised, we are at the mid-year point, and we would like to present the progress that we have made to our district improvement plan. It's important to note that the district improvement plan aligns with the school improvement plan, and the teachers' goals align with their school improvement plan. So there's a straight line right through to the classroom, and we are very proud about that. And we continue to work on that to really strengthen our curriculum and instruction for learning. And I think accountability is very important. we set certain academic outcomes. We strive to meet those outcomes, and it's equally important to report out on them. It gives me great pleasure to turn this presentation over to Dr. Tina Henkel, our assistant superintendent, is going to be doing the sort of the heavy lifting in the first part, along with the principals, specifically about the academic outcomes and where we are with our formative assessments. And then we will talk about some of the other parts of the improvement plan that relate to finance, operations, HR, as well as the security and safety. So Dr. Henkel, take it away.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Lisa. As Superintendent Barbiero said, tonight we're joined not only by members of the district leadership staff, but also our school-based leadership as well, to provide a snapshot of our winter progress based on a variety of our district improvement goals. As we've done in the past, because there's a lot of us contributing to this presentation this evening, we are asking that you hold your questions and discussion until the end, and then we'll open the floor for further conversation. So, Dan, you can move on to the next slide. Lisa and I love to use this slide because it talks about that through line and the our district mission that we are one school system. We are one school district working together to meet a common goal, which is to provide an excellent education for all of our students, pre-K through high school, so that they are prepared for college and career and civic readiness. Our work is interconnected from pre-K all the way to high school, and we all contribute to the success and continued support that our students need on an ongoing basis. Dan? The two items on today's agenda is to first examine our district winter achievement data based on our district goals and the progress that we've made towards those goals, focusing specifically on our end of year goal statements in all aspects of our district improvement plan. And we also want to take some time to review the status of our specific action steps that the district and the school-based leadership teams have identified on ways that we are hoping to align those goals and how we expect to meet those goals by the end of the school year. As a reminder, the district improvement and school improvement plans can be found on our district website. We are going to go through all 6 sections of our district improvement plan. And as Lisa mentioned before, there is a continued through line around that framework and format that we've established from the beginning of the school year when you're looking at the district and or school goals, and then the action steps that follow along those goals in order to meet them. We've added, you can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Dan. We've added one additional layer to tonight's presentation, focusing specifically around the status of those action steps. So you'll see that we've kind of color coded or provided a key related to each one of the district action steps and whether or not that action step is ready to begin because of timing or because of other indicators that we have encountered throughout the school year that is focusing on a forward approach to starting that work. We have action steps that are in progress. We have action steps, only a few that are on hold, and I'll speak on those. And then we have a few action steps that have already been completed as of this point in time. All right, so let's move on to our first section, which is focusing around our math goals related to the district improvement plan. So you'll notice that when we presented our district improvement plan in the beginning of the school year, we identified overall school targets, and then we focused specifically on our subgroup goals, which was students with disabilities. This evening, we are focusing on the goals that are highlighted in red. Those goals are specific to our Northwest Evaluation Assessment, which is NWEA. That is the assessment that we're using as a high predictor of our summative assessments, which happen in the spring, and that includes Smarter Balanced as well as our SAT. So this evening, we're focusing on those grade levels and those content areas that we use that NWEA assessment for predictability purposes. We also want to remind you that as we presented in the beginning of the school year, We talk specifically around percentages and percentiles. Percentages focus on quantity and percentiles focus on ranking within a continuum. And so we're going to talk specifically about the percentage of students that are meeting specific percentiles based on the NWA assessment. All right. So let's begin looking at some of our overall achievement goals for K through 2, 3 through 8, and then grade 9. So many of you probably are aware, in Weston, we're very fortunate to have a data visualization tool called Tableau. We take our data 3 times a year and export the data from our external data sources, and we import that data into the Tableau visualization tool. Dan and his team help us analyze that data on a variety of different levels. And the green, these circles here are the visualizations that Tableau provides to us internally. So our first goal is specifically around kindergarten, first and second grade in the area of mathematics. Kindergarten is the first time that we've actually administered the NWA in the winter. That is because we don't typically assess kindergarten students in the fall. We give them time to acclimate, and then when the winter comes, that's basically our baseline. It's also the first time in Weston that we've actually used the NWA math assessment in kindergarten and first grade. This was a new measure for us this school year, and so we're excited to be able to provide you with that 75% of our students in grades K through 2 are at the 56th percentile based on their achievement scores on NWA. You may recall that in the fall, we talked about that 56th percentile, which based on normative research data that NWA provides, basically tells us that if a student falls at the 56th achievement percentile, then they are on track for grade level mastery. And we currently have 75% of our students that have met that achievement percentile. Our goal is that 80% of our students by the end of the school year will meet that 56th percentile achievement value based on NWA. Moving into grades 3 through 8. Very similar. We know that Smarter Balanced is the summative assessment that the state uses for to determine if students are on grade level. We don't have that data point until the spring. And so NWA is a predictive measure to determine if we are on track to meet that benchmark based on the state assessment. So currently in grades 3 through 8, 68% of our students in grades 3 through 8 are at the 61st percentile based on the NWA assessment. And as students get older and these standards get more rigorous, that percentile value actually changes. So in grades 3 through 8 and above, actually, and 9th grade as well, when students meet the 61st percentile based on their achievement, then they are likely to meet the benchmark on Smarter Balanced. And so we're currently at 68% of our students that have met that percentile. Our goal is that 77% of our students will meet that percentile by the end of the school year. And then finally, we did administer the winter NWA assessment in grade 9. This is an additional data point that we have added this school year. Last year, I believe it was just fall and spring. We have added the winter assessment as well because we want to make sure that we can provide a snapshot for our teachers and our students as well as district goals to see if we're on track for spring. So currently, even though our end of year goal was 75% of our grade 9 students would meet or exceed the 61st percentile, we are at 74%. So we're on track and we're making great progress. Moving on, we have delineated, not yet, I apologize. And then our subgroup data. So as we defined in our district improvement plan, we do look at our subgroup data for students with disabilities, very similar to how the state of Connecticut provides growth and achievement. NWA does the same. Our students with disabilities subgroup, our goal for them is to look at their individual growth, and we want to ensure that they are meeting their growth targets. And so we looked at the growth for students with disabilities based on their NWA assessment. And our end of the year performance goal was that 58% of the students with disabilities in grades 1 through 9 will meet or exceed their growth targets based on the NWA. And currently we have 42% of our students that have met their individual growth targets based on the NWA. So again, we're on track for what we believe is a rigorous and yet achievable goal for the end of the school year. We then delineated a little bit more deeply, even though this is not specific to our district goals. We did want to see what our individual grade levels looked like based on the NWA assessment. So we broke apart those grade bands a little further to look at the achievement values of our students. And here you can see 0 represents kindergarten. When you pull in that data point for Tableau, 0 represents K. Because it uses numeric values and not letter values. So 0 currently is our kindergarten students, and we have 75% of our students that have met the 56th percentile based on NWA, 75% in grade 1, and 76 in grade 2. Furthermore, we broke down grades 3 through 9 as well. And you can see here, I did identify each individual percentage for each grade band from grades 3 through 9. Overall, we have majority of our students, 70 to about 75% of our students have met the 61st percentile. We do have some individual grades, such as in grades 3 and 6, that we want to zoom in a little bit more closely and provide some additional support and look at instructional strategies and ensure that we're identifying individual students that we need to accelerate some of their growth before the end of the school year. Those are 2 areas that we want to look a little further into. So we talk a little bit about the action steps related to these goals. We presented these individual action steps at a district level. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? This is where we start having conversations around how are we going to meet those goals? We know the what, now we want to talk about the how. The first item, or the first action step, is focused a little bit around our Tri-State Consortium visit. In March, we're gearing up for that visit. It is specific to mathematics in grades 5 through 12. We are looking at curriculum alignment. We're looking at the learning design and the experiences that we're offering to students in our math classrooms, specifically looking at those transition grades in grades 5 to 6, as well as 8 to 9, and also looking at the learning design for students with disabilities. So from that tri-state visit, we hope to gather some feedback based on those essential questions and big ideas that we're hoping to provide some evidence to that team so that they can give us some really good feedback and a good report on how to move forward. I'm just going to skip to the third item, which is why that third action step is on hold. We were going to, when I joined the team, John Antonetti was a partner in some of the work prior to my arrival. He was coming in to do some consultation with our teachers in grades 5 through 9. Unfortunately, he got sick, and because of that time frame, we decided that it was going to be very difficult for us to reschedule that consult. And because we were already organizing and waiting for Tri-State to come in and work with us, we decided to put that partnership on hold until we get that feedback from Tri-State, and then we're going to continue that partnership moving into next school year. So then I'm going to throw it over to some of the principals to talk about some of their action steps and how some of these goals and the work that they've been doing down at the school sites have been supporting some of our district-wide goals. So Laura, do you want to take the next action step?
Yes, thanks, Tina. So action step number 2 is about implementing the methodology program, Developing Roots in Kindergarten. We actually started that implementation last year. We had 2 teachers piloting the program, and they were able to spend a year teaching it, becoming familiar with it. And they have been helping support all of the team this year, as we are in a full implementation this year since the beginning of the year.
So in addition to the methodology training by the company, we also have our curriculum instructional leader coaching and helping train the teachers, as well as those pilot teachers are really playing a key role in that. So the teachers are able to plan together and work together and discuss the new program during their common planning time, as well as their team time, which is built weekly into their schedules, as well as those professional development days, which are always very valuable time together as a team. The teachers are very excited about this program. We're seeing exciting learning happening with the students in a very developmentally appropriate way. And our students are highly engaged in the program and really excited about the tasks and the activities that they're doing. So we are well into the implementation and having ongoing conversations about how the students are doing, how the program's working, and there is ongoing weekly support for the classroom teachers. And now I think I'm passing on to Dan to talk about the next
Thank you.
action step.
Thank you very much, Laura. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we're very excited at the middle school to be piloting the new evidence-based math curricula, Desmos, which is based on illustrative math. That alongside the work that Janine Russo has done with the middle school math teachers and the high school math teachers, 612, I guess, around building thinking classrooms has really changed the look and feel of mathematics instruction in the middle school. We see a greater emphasis on making thinking visible, on multiple approaches and methods to solving problems. We're seeing kids up and out of their seats doing, scavenger hunts around the classroom where they're working and solving problems together and using a lot more vertical space for writing to show their work. So again, lots of exciting things happening throughout the middle school. It's a full-blown pilot in 6th grade with some targeted units piloted in 7th and 8th grade this year. The other really big action step that we're excited about is the academic workshop. And I'll talk just about the math one here, but I do hope if you haven't had a chance to yet, you'll go on the documents that are under the budget button, because I was able to put together with the help of the teachers and the curriculum leaders, a nice description of what we're doing in each of the academic workshops. When we looked at math in particular, though, at the end of last year, we noticed kind of across the board, the area of weakness or the greatest potential for growth was in the area of probability and statistics. So we worked on that over the summer to develop the curriculum. And in grade 6, there's a workshop based around statistics. Grade 7, it's around probability models. And grade 8, it's 2 variable statistics. And those workshop models, as a reminder, are being graded not with the traditional letter grade, A, B, C, et cetera, but based on the grade level standards in mathematics. And that's how it's being reported out on the report cards. So that's our progress so far under mathematics, and I will turn it over to Megan Ward to talk about the next 2 steps.
Thanks, Dan. So in terms of the high school, I won't repeat what Dan said, but we are 9th grade Algebra 1 teacher. I might repeat a little, actually. Our 9th grade Algebra 1 teacher is piloting illustrative math as well, not necessarily using Desmos, but the kind of design and implementation of an inquiry-based math curriculum, which is really exciting to see. In terms of designing and implementing those formative tasks, our 9th grade teachers met this past semester during PD. They discussed the areas of focus. So they were able, based on the NWA information and our scores, they were able to identify statistics and probability and real and complex number systems as in areas of we're needing a little bit more instruction and work with our students. So that's how we use the NWA data to inform what we do in our classrooms. In terms of working collaboratively, our math teachers meet frequently, again, to look at that NWEA data. and they are consistently working together. Again, building on the resource they're using, that thinking classrooms, they're really switching from kind of a what is the answer to the how and why, how we get to the answer, and really allowing students to take the time that they need to discover that there could be multiple ways to find the answer to a question, and then looking at how they each solve it using the skills that they have learned in class. So it's really kind of opening up ideas, hearing more from students, allowing that student voice in the classroom. And we're really excited to see that work going on. And I just had a conversation today about putting more whiteboards up on the wall so we can really get kids up and doing math, which is super exciting to see in the high school.
Thanks, Megan. And I've been in those rooms and they are exciting. There's a lot of energy, and we can all, I want to make sure a lot of those building thinking classroom routines are not just mathematically driven. They can be threaded throughout many content areas, and where it's a slow go because it's focused a lot on math, but Megan's got some really great ideas moving forward to support all content areas as even at the middle school too. Before we move on to the next slide though, I was remiss because I talked about the on hold part with John Antonetti, but going back, Patty Falber and I, we didn't just wait to do some of that walkthrough, evidence-based collection. So Patty, did you want to talk a little bit about how we kind of shifted and pivoted, even though John wasn't coming, we decided not to wait and did some work with you and Leslie as well, just briefly.
Briefly. So, right, we did not want to forget about the work that we did with John last year. It was so exciting. So we've continued with doing the walkthroughs and collecting data. In addition to that, Carolyn Vinton, who's our curriculum instructional leader for math and science, has led 2 professional development sessions with each one of the grade levels, continuing that work that John started with us last year, the training, and so that we're ensuring that work moves forward, even without him. But we are looking forward to him joining again next year. And we are definitely working hard on getting ready for the tri-state visit in March.
Absolutely. Thanks, Patty. All right, so we're going to shift into our next section of Section 1 on academic excellence, which is focused on English language arts and reading. As I mentioned, we have 3 overall goals that we're going to be reporting out this evening. We do have a purple goal, if you noticed on the slide right now. In K and 1, we do administer the Fontes and Pinnell assessment as part of our battery, and we've done that a few years. We will be shifting and moving into some new assessments moving into next school year, but to maintain some of that continuity from this school year, we've maintained that Fontes and Pinnell assessment to look at grade level reading levels in K and 1. That is an individualized assessment. And so we currently are not complete with that assessment yet with all of our students, because there's a variety of other assessments that we administer as well. So the purple goals with students with disabilities, as well as the overall grade level for K and 1, we will report those out to you in March. So those are not ready to provide you with a snapshot this evening. So we're going to focus on the NWA assessment again in grades 2 through 9, and also within our subgroup growth goals as well with students with disabilities. So moving to the next slide, as we discussed with our math, we have a pie chart here, which talks about those students that are falling within the green area. Those are the students that are at the 56th or the 61st percentile based on their achievement level on NWA. In grade 2, we have 78% of our students that have met the 56th percentile, which means that they're on track for grade level mastery at the end of the school year. Our goal is that 80% of our students meet that 56th achievement percentile. Again, in grades 3 through 8, we know that our goal is smarter balanced at the end of this school year, but we use NWA as a predictability score to determine whether or not the students will meet that level 3 or 4 achievement level at the end of the school year. And if they reach a 61st percentile achievement level on NWA, the normative studies show that there is a high predictability that they will meet a level 3 on smarter balanced. So far in the winter, our winter snapshot shows that 76% of our students have met that achievement percentile. level in the winter, and we hope to meet or exceed 77% of our students meeting or exceeding that 61st percentile in grades 3 through 8. And then finally, leading the charge, grade 9 ELA. Our goal for the end of the school year was that 80% of our students meet the 61st percentile based on the NWA assessment. And currently 83% of our students have already met the 61st percentile. So they are leading the charge on moving and exceeding their goals already in the winter. As we look at our students with disabilities, same thing as with math, we're looking at their growth targets. So our goal is that 53% of our students in grades 2 through 9, that are identified as students with disabilities meet or exceed their projected growth target that NWA provides at an individual level. And 59% of our students have already met those growth targets. We want to keep reaching though, because we're always looking to close that gap. We drill down a little bit further as well for ELA. So we're looking at grade 2 specifically. What percentage of students met that 56th percentile achievement band? We currently have 78% of our students in grade 2. Our goal for that individual, for this band in grades 2 through 9 was that 80% of the students meet that 56th percentile achievement level. We're looking at individual grades for 3 through 9. Again, similarly, we have a larger percentage of students that are getting closer to that 80% mark. We have students at 75% of our students in grade 3, 85% of our students in grade 4, 72% of our students in grade 5, 71% of our students in grade 6, 74% of our students in grade 7, and 80% of our students in grade 8. The goal for students in grades 3 through 8 was that 77% of those students would meet the 61st percentile by the end of the school year. Grade 8 has exceeded that target right now, but we've got areas in all other grade levels to work on, looking at closing that gap for the end of the school year. And then finally, once again, as I mentioned, grade 9 has already exceeded their end of the year target. But you know, our teachers don't settle for that. They're looking for even a higher percentage by the end of the school year, which is great. So let's focus a little bit on our action steps. I'll start. As I've been providing an update in our subcommittee meeting at the curriculum committee, you know, we've established a district literacy committee. We've already gone through the audit process of the different programs that the state has outlined. We're currently in the process of beginning our internal curriculum audit, as well as our instructional resources and strategies audit, moving into the second half of the school year. And we will be providing more details moving forward through the curriculum subcommittee. We also will be looking at doing some school-based presentations to parents and to have some open dialogue around the science of reading and what this program will look like moving into the following school year. And then the next item on the action step here that I'll take is we also wanted to look at some of our scientific research-based interventions that we provide to students in reading in Tier 2 and Tier 3, also known as MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support. We are going to be convening a district committee, reestablishing that committee, I should say, from last year, and reviewing some of our handbook and our guidance that we've already established in April. So we're ready to start that work, but we haven't started it yet. All right, moving into some of the instructional work and professional development that we've been providing throughout the district in literacy. I'm going to have Laura jump in and talk about the next component and action step around Heggerty. Laura?
Thanks, Tina. So starting on the very beginning of the school year, we implemented the Heggerty Phonological Awareness Program throughout kindergarten, every classroom for every student. And our teachers are amazed at what our students are able to do. It is a very systematic program. And through the daily lessons, the students are learning skills rapidly. And we are really, really seeing great gains in this program. We're very excited about it. And, you know, we're excited to see how that impacts our reading data as we move throughout the rest of the year. I did just want to also take the opportunity about the FMP, which is still in process, that we're testing. It does take longer than the other assessments. The NWA, for example, is a one and done. The students sit for, a sitting, they take the test, they're done. The individual reading with the student, it's done individually by the teacher. So a teacher has to sit with each child individually, listen to them read, analyze what they read, and then make a determination about whether or not, they read it accurately and they understood what they were reading. When students do that successfully, they then go on to the next book. And you can't do more than one book a day. Practice is recommended that you don't continually test students. They need to wait until the next day. So it is a little time consuming, but we really do get a lot of in-depth information about those assessments. It just takes a little bit longer. So that's the Hurlbut progress. I'm going to pass it on now to Patty for foundations.
Great. Thank you, Laura. So this year, we actually brought the Foundations program, which is a structured reading and spelling program, to WIS in 3rd grade, which really extends the explicit word work that they have been doing at Hurlbut in K through 2. This is a really natural, it's really a great complement to our reading program that we have already at WIS. And it really helps with the key components of like phoneme book awareness and phonics and oral reading fluency, as well as spelling. Our teachers have really jumped right on board to teach it, and they've been working really closely, not only with the Foundations program, but with Alex Bluestein, who's our curriculum instructional leader, to really make sure that they are implementing it with fidelity, and they're really seeing some great progress, and the kids really enjoy it because they've been doing it in 2nd grade, so they actually help the teachers sometimes along the way as they're teaching it. So it's been a really nice addition to our program this year, and I'll pass it along to Mr. Doak.
Okay, thanks a lot, Patty. So again, it's a pleasure to get to talk to you about some of the work that's happened at the middle school around reading and writing. A special shout out, I think, to Jess DeBuono and Nick Torres, our 2 CILs. Jess is for ELA 612 and Nick Torres for Social Studies 612, because they really work together. Their departments have been collaborating. Social Studies teachers and English teachers share the major responsibility for the reading goal in at the middle school. So they come together for PD, they come together for department meetings, and they're often joined by our reading specialists, Lindsay Murphy and Jackie Colahan, who have been really doing some explicit work with them in some reading strategies to help students. And they're implementing those in the classroom, in the regular ELA classroom, and also in the ELA workshop. Again, I encourage everybody to go and look at the description of workshop under the budget tab. You'll see a lot of detail there, focusing in writing mainly on how to write claims and how to support your claims with evidence from the text. In addition, that also is graded on standards-based grading, just like I talked about for the math section. So I think those are, and then I wanted to talk about the NWEA formative assessments, the interim assessment blocks and the focused interim assessment blocks. So as Dr. Henkel mentioned, we've already given 2 administrations of NWEA fall and winter, but there's also the interim assessment blocks and the focused interim assessment blocks that teachers are using in between those administrations, in addition to the common assessments that are in the curriculum, to provide multiple data points to gauge student progress. And we also meet periodically throughout the year in data teams with our special education teachers, the reading specialists, the social studies and English teachers, counselors and administrators, to review all of the progress that students are making in multiple assessments. So I just wanted a chance to talk about that as well. And at this time, I think I will pass it on to Megan to talk about the work being done in ELA at the high school.
Thanks, Dan. again, same curriculum instructional leaders, Nick and Jess, and same with Janine for math earlier. They're doing tremendous work in our English and social studies departments, not only with writing, but in their curricular partner groups to collaborate on our assessments. So our English teachers earlier in the year created their baseline assessments, provided those to students, and then reviewed them in their curriculum partner groups, and then also used the NWEA to assess those individual student needs, and then taught into those needs in the classroom. Additionally, they continue to analyze the data to inform instruction and continue to work on authentic learning opportunities so they could really hone in on the areas identified to be addressed through NWEA. So really great work going on and using that data. We also have a data team coming up this Friday at the high school to analyze our winter data and look at where we can see areas for some growth for individual students and in some particular cohorts as well. So more work continuing this year, and we're on a really good, we're at a really good pace and trend right now. So it's exciting.
Thanks, Megan. I know, I wish we had more time. I know we're going really fast. There is so much great work happening at the school level around all of these action steps. The principals are really not even giving you the full flavor of everything that's happening out there, because between professional development and all the individualized and personalized professional development opportunities that they have provided to their staff, and how our staff is even working collaboratively with each other, is really just doesn't do it justice in a setting like this. But I also wanted to give a shout out to the high school teams and the middle school teams that I've seen in the buildings really focus on student goal setting and action planning. They're really emphasizing this with the secondary students a lot this winter session and beyond, really providing some individualized conversations and conferences with kids so that they are more accountable, and we are very transparent around what these numbers mean. Actually, even in Patty's school, when we were actually visiting the classrooms, I don't know if you remember, Patty, we were visiting a reading classroom, but then I was, of course, sitting and talking with one of the students, and out of the blue, he says, do you know, I went up, 10 points on my RIT from math. And I was like, well, we're doing reading right now. And he was just so excited to share with me the growth that he made from fall to winter. And when I asked him about, what are his goals for spring, he said, well, to beat my brother. And I said, well, okay, that really wasn't what I was thinking about, but it was just really exciting to see kids internalizing and coming up with individualized goals for themselves as well. So kudos to all of you. Moving on, the next section of our action plan, our district improvement plan, focuses on science. I'll talk specifically about this. Dan, if you could move on to the next slide. We currently in the district do not have a common normative science assessment. Obviously, we have a summative assessment that we use for the state, which is Smarter Balanced, and then we have, the NGSS in 5, 8, and 11. But internally, we don't have a predictability measure. We have common formative assessments that are identified and created by our teachers for sure, and they're using that. But we're in the process of piloting a assessment tool that we could also use similarly that we do with NWA specifically for science. The teachers are exploring that as we speak. They've tried to design some of the assessments and embed them in their classroom instruction to see how the students respond. They are still in process of piloting that assessment to determine what would meet our needs as a predictability tool for the NGSS assessment in grades 5, 8, and 11. So those components there around the a standardized tool is in progress. And from there, we look to begin to explore some additional rubrics and use our professional development time to analyze some baseline data through the collaborative partnerships that we have with grade level teams. All right, and then the next and final portion of the academic excellence portion of our district improvement plan is our visual and performing arts goal. As we discussed in the beginning of the school year, we really wanted to pivot back into that post-COVID environment and highlight some of the great events and experiences that we may have either put on hold, or we wanted to rekindle back into our K-12 experience, specifically in the visual and performing arts department. As of now, we have been collecting some of the events that we have rekindled and kind of reinvigorated into our practice from the beginning of the school year. We have 25 visual and performing arts related events and activities across K-12 that we have reinstituted or rekindled. 16 are new or reinstated, and therefore, if you look at the overall options and events that we are providing, we are at 64% that have been increased since last year. So the visual and performing arts department is really in overdrive and really bringing back some of those really exciting events that they've had pre-COVID, and bringing it back into light into the schools this school year. So kudos to them, and they're not done. They have a lot more, and they're already started planning and moving forward into the second half of the year. So we'll report more on that at the end of the year as well. All right. Healthy learning environment. This goal specifically talks about inclusive climate and honoring the uniqueness of every individual and independent independent of race, skin color, religion, disability, gender identity, sexual orientation, and other perceived differences. We focus a lot on the social emotional learning curriculum throughout our district. Our specific targets, because we believe that it impacts our academic achievement, is embedded within our goals for section 1. I'm going to have Tracy talk a little bit, if she's there. I can't see her, I'm sure she is there. Talk a little bit around some of those action steps related to the healthy learning environment. And Dan, if you click maybe twice, I think there's animation on this slide, so you can bring up what the goal and those performance targets were that we identified in the fall. Yeah.
Thanks, Tina. We've talked quite a bit about the first action step in board meetings this year, which is specifically around the review and revision of the developmental guidance curriculum in preschool through grade 12. I'm extremely proud of the work that's happening across all buildings in this area. We began our initial professional development days this year thinking about this district-wide. And as we've gotten further into the process, there's been a lot more building level work. This very much underscores the value we place on social emotional learning for all students, and making sure that we're providing instruction, skills, and strategies to each of our learners. And you can see that this particular slide highlights both Ruler and DBT. We've also talked at length about both of those programs, and both of those programs are very much embedded in the curriculum work that's happening this school year. So we're in a good place with that. There's still some work to be done, but a lot has been accomplished so far. The next 4 action steps are related to each of the buildings. I don't know if the building administrators want to speak to any of those. The first one is around resources for Ruler, which really applies to Hess.
If I could jump in here. So Tracy and I have been working collaboratively on that first one with Meredith Starzik. Tracy's been leading the work with the developmental guidance curriculum. It's a huge undertaking, and she's been really been working hard with the director of guidance to revisit and refine some of the curriculum that's currently in place for the district. Tomorrow, at the subcommittee meeting for curriculum, all the principals, including Tracy and Meredith and Patty Powers, who is our curriculum instruction leader in the health area, we will be providing a district-wide presentation around those individual action steps, focusing on the universal SEL curriculum that we offer in the district. And so I just wanted to give that quick shout out before we handed that over to any one of the principals. I don't know if anyone wants to add on to what Tracy said and what I said, or if we want to focus a little bit more on tomorrow's presentation, because it will go into more detail.
I'm thinking by the silence, we should just proceed with the next section. And please, to our viewing public, feel free to attend the subcommittee meeting.
Thanks, Lisa. Section 3 focuses on technology. Dan and I have been working on some of the curriculum aspects of the technology goals. I'm going to have Dan speak a little bit more specifically about the 3 goals related to, or the 2 goals related to technology specifically in his department. Goal 2 is around curriculum development, and he and I have been working with the library media specialist to revitalize the K-12 units of study and align them to the international standards for technology education. And so, Dan, I'm going to ask you just to quickly speak about some of those goals and action steps, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So the target one, increase the number of visualizations being utilized by Tableau will increase by 50%. Throughout the year, I've been meeting with district and school instructional leadership to talk about the existing data visualizations, to train them on how to access and use Tableau, and what I can create to give them more data and more information that they need. So it's a constant cycle of what can I provide for them, and then them providing feedback and asking for more, me creating it, and then providing feedback again. So it's a good feedback loop that we've got going on. And I can honestly say that people are excited to look at data. They want to look at data. They want to analyze the data. They want to use that data as feedback. So it's really an exciting time to get as much data as we possibly can into the hands of everybody who needs it. And in terms of upgrading, meeting the current year of the 6-year technology plan, as you know, the 6-year technology plan is not a snapshot in time, but it's always a 6-year technology plan. So we are always in year 1 of the 6-year technology plan. And so for this year, we have purchased and implemented every piece of equipment that we are going to purchase through the based on the 6-year technology plan. So that has been completed already for this fiscal year.
Thanks, Dan. And we've already contributed to that goal tonight by adding some visualizations from Tableau into the presentation. So that's very exciting as well. We're always looking to build more data visualizations depending on the work that we are engaging and having conversations with out in the field, to make life more efficient for our principals and our teachers. Can you tell I love Tableau? The last 2 sections of the district improvement plan focus on the human resources and finance department, safety and security, and building facilities and operations. Section 4 focuses on goals related to human resources and finance. Terry and Phil, do you want to speak to the goal that you defined and some of the action steps that you've contributed to that goal?
Sure, I will. So the biggest goal is to look at the protocols and the systems that we have in human resources and how that works with finance. We are working with Munis, which is our finance and HR system, to come in and look at the processes and protocols we use right now. We are ready to start on all of those. That will start February 28th and March 2nd. They will come in and talk about what we currently do, take a look at what our current processes are, and then they will come back and make recommendations for how we might want to change the workflow and build in efficiencies. So we do start the review of the current processes with human resources and payroll on the 28th. I believe, Phil, you've already started with AP and AR and some of the accounting things.
Right. So the goals with HR and finance are closely related. We're sort of kind of interdependent, or we're dependent on each other. So for the broader accounting programs and processes, that process was started last Friday. We had 2 sessions, one on Thursday and one on Friday, and then to continue with HR and payroll at the end of the month. And as Terry mentioned, we'll have a write-up of the various recommendations from Tyler/Munis. We'll review those and see how we can best incorporate those recommendations into the system.
Great. Section 5 focuses on safety and security. Lisa, do you want to speak to this goal and the action steps related to it?
Yes, thank you, Tina. So the big goal at the district level was to execute the school's reunification plans in collaboration with the Weston Police Department. We will be reviewing those plans with the Weston Police, with Chief Henyon, the Monday we get back from February break, Monday, February 27th. And the goal is to actually practice the reunification in the spring. This has been a long time coming. We have talked about it, but we've never actualized it on campus. And the police are key to its success, and we really appreciate their collaboration and partnership, and also their lead in how to execute this kind of a plan, given the parameters of the one campus. So the goal is to do that before the end of the school year in the warmer weather. Thank you.
Great. And the last section focuses on building facilities and operations. Lisa, do you want to tackle that one as well?
Yes, thank you. So this is the idea behind the Educational Optimization Committee. Right now, it is in progress. We had put it a little bit on pause for the last month due to the nature of the budget process and getting everything prepared. But we are looking to move forward with this under the leadership of Peter Gordon, who is the person from the board member that is chairing the committee. Earlier this year, or probably around the January mark, we did ask the faculty at the different schools to again provide feedback based on the recommendations of the FOC. So we will be moving forward with that for the second half of the year. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. So we conclude this evening referencing some of Jim Collins's work. You all received this book from Lisa, and I know we've all read it and highlighted it. Some items in here that resonated for me was the idea around some of the work specifically on social sectors. And so I pulled out some key pieces here that really resonated with me and the work that we've actually started even before we got that book, right? Which he talks about great organizations being ones that deliver superior performance and make a distinctive impact over a long period of time. Specifically, when we're talking about what is the key to how effectively the organization delivers on its mission. And I know since I began here, Lisa has been really reiterating our mission and our vision around being a partnership in this work, being one school system, really focusing on not only the qualitative measures, but the quantitative measures. And we want to make sure that we are selecting qualitative and quantitative measures that are consistent. They are have an intelligent decision around the method of assessing the output, establishing a baseline, and assessing progress. And tonight, we really wanted to give you a snapshot of where we are relative to some of that framework and the work around some Jim Collins's idea of what makes a social sector moving a social sector from good to great. So we keep pushing that flywheel, right? We're a disciplined team, and we've got some disciplined thought in our work, and we just keep pushing forward. And hopefully, you know, if we do that, we're going to hit that pivot point and break through into that disciplined thought and disciplined action. So I just wanted to thank everyone for contributing to tonight's presentation. We've all been doing an immense amount of work since I arrived that I've seen, and it's really exciting to see some of the progress that we've already made in a short period of time. So kudos to all of you. So I guess the last slide is just about opening it up to discussions and questions. And those are some pictures of our kids that are having their own discussions and deliberating and debating, and our own teachers that are focusing on some of our literacy work as well. So I will open it up.
Dr. Henkel, I'll jump in.
Yes, sir.
All right. First of all, from what I can tell, this looks like really commendable work, meaning that's a lot of detail. I'm struck by the same observation I had the first time around, is like the level of depth and rigor you all brought to looking at this is pretty darn remarkable. The thing that seems the most encouraging to me is that if we go to slide 11, you don't have to share it, but I'm just referencing slide 11. It doesn't look to me as though any of the interventions are simply like, make the kids better at taking tests. Like it seems as though this improvement is coming very much out of curricular intervention, because if our kids learn to take better tests, but don't learn to be smarter in how they use things, we all lose. It's worthless, essentially. So that's what I'm first struck by, which seems excellent. One question is just based on, so we have all this data, and then we have a bunch of interventions trying to make the data better, which is pretty clear from this presentation. Are we doing more, less, or the same standardized testing as we used to do before identifying this gap that we're trying to address?
Great question. I don't have anything to compare it to. I know that when I arrived here, these assessments were already in place. But when we look at defining some of those goals and actually quantifying some of those goals and really reflecting on some of those goals in a measurable way, that may be the difference from what I recall from, and you all can speak to it more than I can, as far as like the district goals and how they previously looked versus this year.
Yeah, if I can add, it is new for especially the 9th grade to do it, and principals feel free to jump in and correct me. Doing it in the fall, in the winter previously, and I'm going even before COVID, it was just testing students about whom we were concerned. And we felt, so it wasn't the entire cohort. So we felt very strongly coming out of COVID that it was important to test everyone in the grade, because by doing so, we can really hone in. As Dr. Henkel says, these are not only the NWEA as a predictability measure, but it provides literally instantaneously data on students. And, you know, COVID was tough, and coming out of COVID, we really want to make sure that no one falls through the cracks. And the best way to do this is by excellent teaching for instruction, using these kind of assessments to provide data. And I am so proud of the work that Dr. Henkel, the principals, and Dan DeVito have done in getting the data analytics in the hands of the teachers. We are fast becoming a culture in our school district of being adept at analyzing data, where in the past, you know, we struggled. We didn't have as many licenses. There were pockets of it. And now we are tackling it at scale, which I think is so important.
Building on that question, thank you, everybody. If there is like a kind of a one-to-one of what we previously were testing and what we're now testing, that'd be curious to see. But again, I'll just reiterate, I'm encouraged by that. It looks like everything we're trying to do is about intervention, helping the students learn more effectively via curriculum as opposed to coaching for testing, which seems great. Question to you, Dr. Henkel. So given the sort of national controversy and the questions about the Fontes and Pinnell system more broadly, and also our district's own choice to move more to more science of reading-based curriculum, can you give me more color? Why are we sticking with the Fontes and Pinnell assessment as long as we are? I heard your point about consistency, but does that actually fit with the new curriculum we're moving to? And given that leveled reading apparently is like not all it's cracked up to be, what's the thought of continuing with Fontes and Pinnell?
So currently in K and 1, it's one of the only assessments that we have right now that our teachers are trained. They're able to implement that assessment with fidelity and also be able to gather information so they can use it for instructional purposes. We recognize that we have a plethora of other assessments and an assessment conversation that is currently underway for the second half of the school year, looking at the state required assessments, what those assessments tell us in the reading realm, and also auditing the assessments we have in the district that we need to sunset. Fontes and Pinnell will likely be one of those assessments where we're reevaluating whether or not we want to keep it or not, because remember, we don't want to assess just to assess. If we have assessments that tell us the same piece of information, then we only need one piece of information to give it to us, right? And in addition to that, we have guidelines by the state that we are not able to veer away from. So part of our process for the second half of the school year, in addition to instructional practices, is also an assessment audit, which provides us with a little bit more time to really look at the current assessments we have. What are the new assessments that we need to bring in based on the new state guidelines, and then come up with a more streamlined assessment calendar moving into next school year, right? The timing of it wasn't perfect. And so we wanted to make sure that teachers still had enough information to adjust practice, provide enough detail for parents around reading levels as we move into a new realm next year. So that's why we didn't sunset it yet. The timing was not there.
Okay. Moving on to skipping on with the assessment question, if we move on to the science, we're talking about getting a new science assessment tool. How many additional days of testing do we anticipate that would add to the year? And that's the first part of the question. The second is, are you confident that you can implement the same sort of like curriculum instructional support to achieve positive outcomes as opposed to like essentially just giving more assessments?
Yeah, the assessment tool for science, Dan even mentioned it a little bit, Dan Doak. We have the state of Connecticut, years ago, when the state of Connecticut adopted the Common Core standards, part of their promise to districts was that they were also going to create an assessment platform to use for progress monitoring or regular ongoing checks based on those assessments. I'm on public record, this is truth. The state overpromised and underdelivered. It was years and years later where they actually gathered teachers together to actually design these assessments. Those are called the interim assessment blocks and the focused interim assessment blocks. We now have access to them. They're updated regularly. They're provided in math, reading, and science. I've used them all. And we are still exploring some of those options for science. It doesn't look like we'll be adding any additional standardized measure for science. So we're looking at identifying curriculum-based or common-based assessments that all teachers can use throughout the curriculum during instruction, so that it's not something in addition.
Gotcha.
But right now, we need to really refine what that common practice looks like, specifically in those grades 5, 8, and 11, to help us with some predictability for some of those NGSS assessments that the state requires.
Okay. And then move into the visual and performance arts. I guess this is piggybacking on all the talk we're doing about data visualization. That one, just based on how you have it labeled, it looks like that's really kind of an afterthought of everything else, only because there's only one color for all of it. And all of it is essentially like, in continuation, or we're going to get to that. So the question, I guess, is like, are we keeping visual and performing arts up to the same pace that we're also looking at these other three areas? And then I guess a follow-up to that is, you mentioned the 64% increase from last year. How does that compare to 2019, like pre-COVID, in terms of total exposure or total possible things for our kids?
Yeah, the goal for this department was to really, like I said, rekindle some of the events, that this is the list, I know it's blurry, with our two curriculum and instruction leaders to revisit some of the experiences that we had to pivot away from, or we weren't able to do because we were, because of space, proximity, et cetera, and some of the other guidelines. Mm-hmm. So our goal this year was to really, get that department reinvigorated and excited about some of the things that we really didn't want to lose in the district. And so at this time, we're looking at all the different events and just listing them out as a department across K-12 to see what are new, what's been reinstated, so that we don't lose sight of some of those really exciting events that we held true to as a fabric of the Weston community over the years. So we don't have an additional metric if you're looking for that, other than quantifying what events and where do they have opportunities to display their talent and be creative across the district.
It was more just a reaction because every other one had like some yellow and some green and this and that, and that was just essentially one color. But I guess the simpler question to ask is, so 64% increase from last year, does that bring us up on par with where we were 2019? Or are we still trying to, implement some of the same curriculum we had, or the same events or the same exposure we had in 2019?
Yeah, we have of the 25 events because, Liz Morris and Kate O'Keefe, they've been helping me identify what they currently did prior to COVID and some of the events that they wanted to hold true. And like I said, of those events that they did in the fall, when they listed them out, the 64% represents the new or reinstated events in comparison to what they did prior to COVID or during COVID that they weren't able to do. So that is a significant increase, which is very exciting.
Okay. Last thing I'll ask, and then I'll let someone else have the floor so I don't monopolize things here. I just want to call out both Dan and Megan. You both said this thing about kids getting up out of their seats, walking to the walls, vertical classrooms. That just sounds very exciting in terms of if their physical bodies are expressing their interest or joy in learning. Boy, oh boy, is that a good indication there's some things that are going right. And it seems as though, like, given that you're suggesting trying to find ways to weave this through other content areas, just that one sort of measurement, like, are the classrooms more dynamic? Are people moving and in space and learning in multiple three-dimensional ways as opposed to a much more passive experience? That sounds like a pretty simple, like, eyeball test to see how things are in the classroom. Glad to hear that. And then I would just tag that is the beginning of a piece of information we might want to carry through as we think about the EOC and the FOC and their work, what physical space is going to look like as we begin to think about, the next years and decades of this school system.
I think the important thing to remember here is that was going on pre-COVID as well. And during COVID, everyone put the brakes on, and it was a space issue and desk issues and not being close and hybrid and everything else. So what I'm pleased to see is what I would say a return to the practice pre-COVID, and also enhancing it and taking it to another level, especially in the areas of math with the, building thinking and transparent in the classrooms. So, that's the big takeaway, I think, for us. How to keep the momentum going and build, because COVID really, it stopped, everything stopped. Instruction looked like it did back in the, in the 60s, desks lined up, everybody apart, nobody moving around, masks on, very, very different way of teaching. So it's refreshing to see that it's returning and even being enhanced in our curriculum.
Yeah, well, what's so exciting that you're all talking about is it really does look, at least from what you presented anyway, that these incremental positive improvements we're seeing are coming out of curricular design and serious systematic thinking about what's happening there, as opposed to more of a Band-Aid approach of trying to look at how to be more effective on a test score. So from what I see from that perspective, thank you for the very thorough walkthrough and well done on the work that you're doing that way. I will stop monopolizing things for minutes and minutes and minutes. Someone else can chime in.
I have a couple of questions. I noticed that when we were looking at the graphs for the performance for the ELA and math, we didn't actually see the distribution of students. We saw the yes above benchmark or the no below benchmark. Do we have any indicators of how the kids are around the benchmark plus 1 or 2, 3 percentiles rankings? If we're looking at this as predictive, it would be helpful to know how many students are just barely scraping by or just almost meeting benchmark to get a better picture of how close we are to those end goals.
Yeah, at the district level, we don't quantify those, but at the curricular level in small groups, that is exactly what we're speaking to within the action step. So when the curriculum teams come together, I've witnessed specifically them identifying individual students where they fall within the overall average, as well as their individual domains, because they report out not only is an overall achievement level, but also they get an achievement level within 4 different domains specific to math and literacy. And that way, when they're looking at goal setting and action planning, the students are actually identifying a specific area that they want to grow or focus in so that their overall score improves. And there's a plethora of resources that we're also going to be providing during our March professional development for teachers around the curricular connections and the instructional connections for teachers to drill in even further, a little bit more around how the data connects to some of the curriculum, the standards, and the units that are coming up in the coming months in the curriculum. It also helps with grouping at the classroom level, because there's reports that provide teachers with grouping students together based on specific skills or needs that a group of students may need support in, so that the teachers can provide small group instruction as well. So when we look at the, I don't want to say cusp kids, but the students that are close, or maybe between the 40th and 50th percentile, we look at that at a granular level versus a predictability level for the end of the school year. And we do that at the curricular level in department meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes sense. We're using the NWA to predict how they're going to do on Smarter Balance. So I guess a little bit of tolerance in the exact nature we interpret that, right? I guess kind of similarly along those same lines, I noticed that we looked at the growth scores for a subgroup, but we didn't look at the growth scores overall. So I was just wondering, for our students that are well above benchmark or not really near the benchmark or made benchmark or are comfortably above it, how are we as a checkpoint knowing that we're growing those students as well?
Yeah, we look at both, right? We look at achievement. Overall, we look at achievement because that's the predictability score for level 3 on a Smarter Balanced. Although Smarter Balanced does report in the next generation accountability system, the growth for subgroups, but overall, when we look at that next generation accountability system and the indicators for a district to be scored on, it's based on overall achievement. So when we look at the subgroups for students with disabilities, we're focusing more on growth goals for them versus the achievement level for the total overall, group of students.
That makes sense. I'm just wondering, like, we're doing this mid-year check-in of students, and I see, we've got some idea of which students are going to need more intervention going into the second half of the year. I was just curious, some of those students that don't fall into that category, in this check-in, how are they doing? And what are we going to do to meet the needs of the group that maybe is high-performing but not growing?
Right. Yeah, you're putting your teacher hat on, Dr. Camberly. I know where you're coming from. Absolutely. And all of those conversations are done at an achievement level and a growth level at the curriculum partner grade level departments. And that's the asset of our curriculum and instruction leaders, because those are the conversations that they're having by grade or by course, by content throughout the district. But when we look at our district goals, right, we look at a large group of population, and that's how our goals are written on a district level, even at a school level, right? It's the teacher level where the teachers are looking at individual students, individual groups of students, looking at achievement and growth, and looking at subgroups, right? But at the district level, that's not how we write our goals.
Okay.
But I hear you.
And I think it's important to note at the teacher level, that's where the individual mid-year conferences come in with their evaluators. Every teacher had to have a quantifiable component of his or her goal. So when Megan or Dan or Patty or Laura sit down with the teachers, the assistant principals do, they have to be able to come and speak to their goal and student progress within their class and the identified group that in that cohort that they're working with, whether it be pushing students higher, targeting specific students that are the cusp kids, for lack of a better word. That's where you will see that kind of accountability level within that teacher's particular cohort.
Okay. And just my last question related to technology. We heard a lot about how much better the faculty and the teachers and the administrations are using Tableau and leveraging that. Is there any thoughts about how we can then pass that on to parents in the sense of increasing the data literacy of their own students' performance, so that as these mid-year conversations can happen, parents are armed with the information and understand how to use it, or any thoughts about that piece?
Yeah, the principals can chime in as well, but some of the conversation that we've been having at the curriculum subcommittee meeting is the impact of a mid-year conference with parents and students, right? That we're not just looking at one indicator, that we're looking at a variety of measures and looking at student work when we're having conversations around student performance. And so, as you know, we don't just look at quantitative measures. We need to look at qualitative pieces too. And because we're individualizing a lot of our work in Weston, we're blessed to be able to do that because of our size and our capacity. We really encourage those conferences and small group conversations on an individual level between the teacher and the student, because they have the preponderance of evidence, at their fingertips, which at the district level, we really look at that global view.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if any principals wanted to add anything to that. It's a good question. We're always looking at becoming stronger when it comes to data literacy and analyzing data and explaining and communicating data. And, it's every time even I go to NWA training, for example, just that one assessment, and there's so many different metrics out there. We're always looking at more efficient ways and looking at, what the data is telling us and how we can explain it to students and to parents. And so we're really going to lean a lot on our March 20th PD. We're going to use that time for our staff and our administrators, where they get to have some choice around some of those components around assessment analysis, and looking at some data analytics there too, if they choose.
And I just want to add a little bit to what Tina said, and thank you for bringing it up, Tina. I think we need to remember too that while these assessments are valuable, they're also a moment in time. So there are times when a student's standardized assessment doesn't reflect the learning and their abilities. There's a reason colleges are test optional, most of them, because it's one measure of a student's success. So when we have those conversations with families, we look across all of the information we have about students and it really paint a good picture. And I think that's part of what Weston does so well. We know our students, we really personalize, and we have those ongoing conversations with families, more often at the early elementary years. But it's just critical to be able to look at a variety of information about a student and not just one measure, which may or may not capture the learning.
I agree that it's actually a snapshot in time, but I also have a question then, taking a look at the graphs that were presented both for math and also for ELA. It appeared that there's one cohort in particular that seems to be struggling to meet the goals that we have in place for it. I'm not quite sure if this is year over year, if it's something that we've seen this cohort struggling. If it's the current sixth grade, if we've seen that in fifth grade with them last year, or if this is something new for them. Do you happen to have that information, Dr. Hinkle, as to how they compared to last year?
I have information on sixth grade specifically. Is that which the grade level?
Yeah, how did they do in fifth grade, basically, at the same time last year? Is this as Laura said, is this just a snapshot in time in which they weren't necessarily looking their finest, or is this something that the cohort has been experiencing all along?
Yeah, Dan and I actually looked at it at the last training as well, and I'm looking at the individual ones here. It seems they seem to have plateaued around that same grade. I know that we have been doing a lot of work around the curriculum implementation, specifically in sixth grade, and we have more work to do around closing that gap this year. There are the larger population of sixth graders at this point have not met all of the goals that we've had, the growth goals based on NWA. But we've been working with Janine and focusing on some of the instructional practices with the sixth grade teachers, because they're learning a new curriculum, and also supporting some of the embedded strategies for that building thinking classroom. So kids are really having an opportunity to look at multiple representations and think critically when it comes to mathematics, and some of the conceptual understanding that is a large shift from grade 5 to grade 6. What some people don't recognize is that the standards change significantly from 5th to 6th grade. Not only is the language more difficult, but the domains completely change from when they go to 5th to 6th grade. So there's a large transition, not only developmentally when they go from elementary to middle school, but then there's also a large jump of the standards as well. So we're looking at individual scores this year. It seems to be a trend over the last 2 years in that grade. And we know that we've seen some growth, but not enough from fall to winter yet.
So it's the trend within that cohort, right? Because I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to isolate whether or not it's the cohort or whether or not we've seen a plateau in 6th grade for the last few years. And if that's the case, then it might be an instructional issue as opposed to,
I can see 2 years here, that's the same cohort, but I can't, Dan can probably speak even before that, because I know we've analyzed that data a little bit in that transition grade from 5th to 6th grade.
Right. So, but so what you're saying is that it appears to be this cohort. It's not necessarily every 6th grade seems to like drop a little bit, or is that?
I think there's a combination of things. I think there's a combination of curriculum. I think there's a combination of that jump in standards. And I think coupled with as we pivot off of COVID. So it is an area of focus, grade 6 for us, that we anticipated already,
right?
Even before the winter assessment. Dan, were you going to say something, Doug?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it does seem to be consistent in this time of year. Now that we're testing basically everybody in the winter and not just the progress monitoring, we are noticing that. And I would concur with what Dr. Henkel's saying, that there is a jump in the standards, and the second half of the year. If you look at that year over year, that's where we make the most growth. I went back and looked at previous years. The gap closes in the second half of the year in math.
That's good news. That's good news. And Dr. Henkel, what you were referring to with the way that the testing changes from 5th grade to 6th grade, I'm assuming the CILs that we're looking at putting in place will basically, part of their responsibility in math will be working with the children in 5th grade to prepare them for that transition to 6th grade and the testing, et cetera, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, the house just come home. So yes, it's going to be a conversation of not only understanding the transition of standards from 5th to 6th grade, but also the curricular shifts as well. And they've already started that work. It's just a matter of focusing more of their time and energy, because as you know, they're half time, so they do what they can in the time that they have.
Right. Okay, thanks. That's it for me.
Are there other questions or comments? It's quite a bit of information, to say the least.
I have 3, but they're quick. 2 are really happy. One's a little more cutting. One is, I think we're doing really well in the performing arts, because I saw it all shook up and it was a hoot. 2, I think Wiscon's got a lot of spirit, because I went to the Sweetheart Dance and it was great. And here's a shout out to the WISC PTO, but mostly to the janitorial staff, because it was a mess. So they do a great job. A little less lighthearted is, I want to follow up on Bernie's question. I look at the numbers for NWA, and it's like 70%. It's like the magic number, and we have some. That's grade level. It may be something that can be discussed at the teacher development as sort of the bookends, right? If I was a parent, I said, what happens to the 30% that didn't make the cut? Like, what's the game plan, right? I mean, that's an obvious question a parent would ask. And 2, I think more to Bernie's point, of the 70%, maybe 10 or 15% are just, future Albert Einsteins, right? So how are we nurturing the overachievers, right? I mean, great, you did, decimals, your fractions, you're crushing it, but like, let's push them a little bit. So parents on the other end may have that question. So no answers tonight are expected, but something to think about, those 2 bookends, because we're so focused on the 70% or 75%, but I think we lose a little bit it gets diffused on the bookend. So that's just my more hard-hitting observation from the great presentation this evening.
And
I
just to
have one-
clarify, our goals are 80, 90. Okay, just making sure.
I have one quick question. I think that the data piece is great, the progressing, in progress, progressing and stuff like that, it's great too, right? Because we can go back and, we'll look back at this in the future and see how we're doing. But my question is more along the lines of, do we have any data from points in time 3 years ago, 5 years ago, or 7 years ago that could be added to this to show where we are today, where versus where we were for the same grades 3 years ago or 5 years ago, so that we sort of know. I know there's a national problem, right? I was reading the news today, math scores, for example, it's not unique to Weston, it's a national problem. But is there a way to add some more data to this where we can look where we were this point in time 3 years ago or 5 years ago, just to kind of see, more of a historical trend?
Yeah, so I love that idea, David. I think that it depends on the timing of the assessment. I know when I jumped on, you guys were just looking at some of that long trend data in the spring. So it wouldn't be appropriate to do it now because we don't have as much, right? So in the spring, we will look at trend data over time. We'll look at historical data a little bit further. It will allow us to look at NWA data as a predictability to determine if it actually is aligned to our spring assessments, and look at some more of the summative components that Smarter Balance expects districts to maintain, as well as SAT at that point. So that would be my thought, but everyone's been here a lot longer than me.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is that when we only did progress monitoring in the winter, it's a little bit tricky to look at historical comparisons. Probably what we would look at is the SBA, not the NWEA, because the NWEA, we won't get the full picture on because not everybody took it. So we can certainly look at the SBA back in time. And the other tricky piece is we have to go kind of way back, because over COVID, there was problems with the administration of it for a couple of the years. So the data isn't, it's not as, what's the word I'm looking for? Reliable as we would hope. That doesn't mean we can't learn from it. And I think it is, as Dr. Henkel said, worthwhile to look back at the SBA. However, we know the work that needs to be done. We are measuring and being held more accountable to it than we probably have in the last 8 to 10 years. And I think that's a big step forward. I would encourage us to look back at the summative, not the formatives, to see the story of what we were doing, and yet at the same time not spend too much time with the analysis, because the reality is that we have to worry right now about the children in front of us and what's going on and how to move them forward. We have a great deal of work to be done with the new materials, the new resources, the new reading program, what's going on in math specifically. We're piloting something in 6th grade, only units in 7th and 8th. We're doing something in 9th grade algebra. How can we do this more at scale and really dig in? So I think that we can certainly provide that kind of a component at the end of the year, sort of like a historical snapshot, but I would say it mostly would be with SBA. And again, we have to be careful of certain years that we looked at because the tests were not as reliably administered during COVID. Is that a fair statement, Mr. DeVito? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I asked just because I don't want to look back at the past data for punitive purposes. It's more to understand what we could do different in the future. And it's very plausible it doesn't apply, right? Some of the historical data might not apply. So not for punitive purposes, but more for, is there something there that we were doing differently that would still work in 2023?
I think that, and remember, this is the first time we also disaggregated the data by the levels in math. We didn't do it. And in doing that, it told more of the story. So I think that it's all about the story and where we've come and where we're going forward. And if we can learn from that, then we definitely should do it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just had one thought. I mean, I echo everybody's comments. I think it's a very thorough presentation. There's a lot of data to go through and digest, and I think it's a very thorough presentation. And I appreciate all the hard work and effort that went into it. In setting up these, the paths that we've set forward to achieve the district goals that we set at the beginning of the year. Now we're halfway through and you've got all this wonderful data to look at. Is there anything in what you've presented to us today that makes you change course in any of the paths that you've chosen in terms of how to achieve the goals that have been set out? Or do you find the data across the board to be so supportive of the paths that you've chosen that no change is necessary?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And we think about that every time we have our mid-conference conversations internally with teachers, with admins. And I think that we've set pretty aggressive yet achievable goals in the beginning of the school year. And we base those on the end of school year achievement targets. And although in some areas we've met or exceeded our goals, in some areas we still have a lot of additional work that we need to focus our energy and time on. And so with that in mind, some of the largest growth, I think Dan Doak said it, some of the largest growth happens, sometimes in fall to winter, actually, because winter to spring, sometimes there's a change in schedules, that there's not a lot of, because of the calendar, there's less continuity of instruction. So there is this ebb and flow sometimes in certain grade levels. So I would not change course at this time, given some of the 3 to 5% increase that we looked from last year to this year. And there are different assessments. Yes, we use NWA. Yes, they should be predictive, but the SAT and the Smarter Balance are different assessments. So I think we should, refer or reflect on Jim Collins's work and say, define what those goals are, be disciplined, stick with the goals, be confident in the metrics that we chose and the decisions that we made. And let's see how it happens let's see what the spring goals look like at the end of the year. That would be my recommendation, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? One of the things, this is the first time I've heard this, and something Peter said really resonated, which is, we're educating the 100%, not just the 70s, and what happens to the 30s, the child that's below the 70. And I think about some of the conversations we've been having. This is budget related, about we have fewer students, and the number of teachers and educational professionals are haven't declined at a rate that the number of students has. And it gets back to, if there's one takeaway for me is kind of the neophyte here, is this is a very, very dynamic process that we're dealing with, because we are trying to educate the 100, not the 70. And we really need to deal with the children that, maybe below the percentage that we're trying to achieve. And so, I mean, I wish we could get some people in the community, to listen to this conversation, because you just don't walk away with the feeling that, well, we have fewer students, so therefore we need fewer teachers, because it's just not the case. It's, what Tina and Lisa and everyone else on the educational side here, I mean, you've all just attested to that, over the last hour or so. I'm sure there's probably questions that we all have, having listened to this, and I would encourage everyone just to reach out to Lisa and Tina and talk to them directly. So if it's okay with everyone, shall we move on to the website?
Yes, exciting news. And I'm going to let Mr. DeVito, who has worked tirelessly to we are almost at the point where we are unveiling the new website. My latest podcast that will be going out the last week of February features our very own Dan DeVito, who will be talking about the wonderful new website and what parents should know. Dan, can you give us a quick preview of what's to come?
Yeah, sure. So after really years of feedback from staff and the public and parents and even students, we are finally migrating our current bad, annoying, frustrating website to a new website provider. All of the data has been migrated over. I've been doing regular updates during the communications committee meetings. And now that everything's been migrated over, we are just working with the staff at each building to make sure that everything is up to date. And we are going to be going live with the new website the week of February 27th. I'm going to be sending out a communication to families and posting it on our social media account over the next week with a definitive date that we're going to be going live. And to just remind everyone that if they have a bookmark to a specific page to our existing website, they are going to have to re-bookmark that page because all of our links are going to change in the future. So for instance, if they had bookmarked the cafeteria or the lunch menus or the transportation page, that URL or link will now be different. So once we go live, if they click on that bookmark, they're going to get a page cannot be found. So I just want to let everyone know they're going to have to start over by going to our district page, navigating to the page they want to look to, and bookmark it. So I'm going to give a sneak peek of what our page looks like. So bear with me for a second while I pull this up. All right. So this is our new webpage. As you can see, it's much cleaner and we're trying to organize it the best that we possibly can. We have our Instagram feed. Each school will have their Instagram feed on their main page. We have our 6 main bullet items, and these are the 6 most popular sections of our webpage. Shout out to the communications committee for recommending that I change this bullet at the bottom to say, who do I contact for? That's all the communication protocols that all the schools have. It's one of the biggest questions that parents have is, hey, who do I contact for paying a parking pass or the nurse or to report an absence? So, but it said communication protocols, and David brought up a very good point. That sounds really professional. I don't know what it even means. So we changed it to who do I contact for ... which makes more sense. Our news items, our awesome podcasts, and our events, our social media page, all that good stuff. We're trying to make it as clean and fresh as possible. And if you go to each school, they're also very similar. All of the content is exactly the same. We just are trying to remove as much of the old stuff as possible, updated it with the new stuff, if applicable, and organize things based on feedback that we have been receiving throughout the years. So we just wanted to give a quick preview as to what each site looks like. They're all basically the same. We're constantly going to be updating the website, working on it, working on staff. I will say, from a back-end perspective, it is much, much easier for us to update and to keep things organized. One of the biggest complaints we had over our current website is things would get confusing and complicated and buried over time. This website kind of restricts that from happening. So we're hoping that everything will stay clean and crisp and easy to navigate to. We are always looking for feedback. So as part of the communication I send out to residents, I'm going to include an email address for feedback, so people can email their feedback on the page. We're always looking for ways to communicate better and to organize the website as best as we possibly can. We know people want to quickly access our website, get the information they're looking for, and move on. So the more feedback we get, the better it always is. And that's basically it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks to the communications committee. It looks fantastic. Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
Superintendent's report.
Superintendent's update. I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the budget. As you are aware, we did present to the Board of Selectmen on February 7th. We reviewed the budget, and we will be back with them on this coming Thursday. I've presented by the end of this week, I will have presented about the budget to the PTOs, the faculties at every school. Dr. Henkel and I also made ourselves available during the lunch shifts at every school, the days after the presentation, to be able to answer questions and clarify. We're also doing some community outreach in that you will be speaking at the Young Women's group next month, and I spoke to Kiwanis on Saturday. The big new target date is March 8th, when we will present to the Board of Finance about the budget. So as Phil Cross always says, it's a marathon, not a race, a sprint. And so we are moving forward with the process, and look forward to presenting on March 8th to the Board of Finance. Open choice. I wanted to talk very briefly about open choice to you all. As you know, Open Choice is the program that Weston has participated. Oh my goodness. I can't remember when it started off the top of my head, but when I was an assistant principal at the high school, we were involved, and that's back in 2002. Open Choice is when we have students from urban areas, specifically Bridgeport, come to our district, and they are very much our students. Last year, the Open Choice program started connecting with Norwalk as well. And because we border on Norwalk, we are really very excited to start a partnership with Norwalk. In fact, we met with the director of Open Choice was it the beginning last week, end of last week, beginning of this week? It's all kind of a blur. Dr. Henkel, Ms. Edwards, and I met with Eric Nyquist, who's in charge of the program. And we we're really excited about the Norwalk connection for the following reasons. Right now, we have 29 students that come to us from Bridgeport. They will continue to come. And what's changing really is the transportation, because they will be on one transport bus, and then we will be reaching out to Norwalk. You know, when little children are on a bus, it's a very long distance from Bridgeport. I see Patty shaking her head, and Laura, to come to the Weston Public Schools. It's a big deal for families to send their children on the Thruway or the Mirror Parkway to get here. So with it being close with Norwalk, it's much easier for students to participate in co-curricular activities, and they don't have to. If the child stays late, it's just much easier all around. And having lived this program for more than 20 years, I'm very excited about that. So right now we are committing to, as we have in the past, 3 spots at Hurlbut Elementary School. We are working with Laura Cadis to see if it will be a kindergarten first grade split. So it's that time of year, and we're excited to get involved in this process early, because one of the things we would like to be able to do as the spring progresses is actually to be able to meet with the families of these youngsters and sort of, welcome them to the district and set them up for success, which frankly hasn't been something we have been as able to do in Bridgeport because of the transportation issue. People don't have cars, they can't get here. It's problematic. So that's just a quick update on Open Choice.
Thanks, Lisa. Any questions? Let's move on to the committee reports. The first is the Communications Committee.
Dan did an excellent job getting everybody up to speed, so I have nothing more to report.
That's great. The Curriculum Committee.
We are actually meeting tomorrow afternoon, so we'll have a good update for next month.
Okay. Peter, EOC.
Well, certainly what was alluded to earlier by the superintendent. And I'm going to use the flywheel as the analogy here. We do have momentum. We are overcoming inertia. I had a good meeting with an industrial design group called IDEA. They're very famous for like iPhone designs, but they have an educational practice. I reported into the committee on Friday. And I think the plan is to give a broader presentation on their insights and their perspective on student and teacher-centric learning within the buildings. Of course, we're considering brick and mortar, but also what happens in the brick and mortar, between the brick and mortar. So stay tuned for, I think, a March more rigorous update on those set of meetings I've had. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. The next is the Finance and Operations Committee. Phil covered the finance side quite well. When we met last Friday, just a few comments. One, since we appeared not to have had a winter, it's allowed maintenance to take place kind of on an accelerated basis. We had a meeting. I think everyone in town has received this questionnaire from the Live Green organization on sustainability that was sent out a couple, 3 weeks ago. We did have a meeting with, and that was under the ARPA funding that the town received. We did receive a conversation with the group. We talked about a number of things as it relates to sustainability. One was composting, and what Mike Aikenhead is doing across the schools. Two, we talked about electric buses. So we learned, and I think Phil is aware of this, that the state will mandate all school buses be electric by 2035, I think the date was. And as much as that may sound like a long way away, it's not that far away in the grand scheme of things. And we're starting to get information from this group about what that means and how we have to plan for it. The conversation was, there's always been an ongoing conversation about where we currently park our buses, and should we move the bus depot, and what does that mean? And that's a much broader conversation with the town as well. But now adding this electric bus component just kind of requires that we accelerate that conversation. And I did bring this to the attention of Samantha Nestor that we should start this now, not wait 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, because that'll be too late. We also are contemplating putting in an electric charging station at the high school, and we were talking about that. And then we just had a rather detailed review of the town of the budget, where we are in this current fiscal year. Did I miss anything, Melissa?
No, I think that was a very thorough recollection.
Thanks. Policy Committee?
Yeah, so we just had the policy up on technology for first read. We had a really robust meeting last week, and there's 3 or 4 policies that we're in the process of reviewing. We wanted to take another look at some of them, so I think we'll have quite a few for first read, maybe at our next meeting, but we're moving through them.
Thanks. Negotiations Committee. We're in negotiations now with ASME Union. The last of the three unions that we've been negotiating with. We had our first meeting last week. We have another one coming up in a week or so. Can't remember exactly where we are in the calendar.
March 1st.
March 1st. And we'll just report back, as that progresses. CES.
So that's me. We sort of meet monthly. It's, I think, as Lisa knows and Tina knows and Steve, it's other board members and occasionally a couple times a year, other superintendents and administrators. Nothing super interesting other than budgets. All the various districts are kind of talking about what percentage they're going to be approving. So I can say many towns are jealous of what we came in at.
Yeah, you can just see from the press that they're all over the board, and we're at the low end, if not the lowest that I've seen. And they range up to, I think Shelton is at almost 8%. I just happened to read one of the Connecticut newspapers, and everything in between.
Yeah,
I think Shelton's has dropped a little bit when we met with the superintendents on Friday, but we at 2.94 are clearly the lowest in our DIRG. The highest in the DIRG right now is Westport at 5.24.
And Norwalk, from what I understand, started at 18%. And somebody there in that board was like, there's no way I can even mutter the word 18%. And I think they wound up at 12%. And well, no, right. But then the conversation they asked for, I think, the 12%. And obviously went down from there, but Norwalk started at 18% internal communication.
CABE.
So CABE is kind of just sends out bulletins about news that's happening around schools all throughout Connecticut. And a lot of the conversations that we're having about policy and about budget are the same types of conversations that are being had around the rest of Connecticut. So nothing new to report there.
Yeah, and you're just beginning to see what's coming out of Hartford now that the legislature's back in session. So I guess three meetings from now, we'll have a lot more information. And then just lastly, the Western Education Foundation.
Not a lot to report there. The last meeting, I was not able to attend the complete meeting just because of the presentation of the budget to the Board of Selectmen. But I made sure that my information for the budget was carried over to WEF. And my understanding of the meeting was that they're continuing to work on the awards for the juniors and seniors at the high school. And I further talk about what to do with the funds moving forward that they got from their fundraiser in the fall.
Thanks. Are there any pending items that we should be aware of ahead of our next meeting, which is on March 14th, and this is our quarterly meeting that'll be in person? Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss? Well, this has been a great meeting from where I sit. A lot of exciting things going on across the board. Everything from $80,000 worth of weight equipment to a lot of interesting and progressive educational movements to improve the educational system here. So, with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
See, that does it. Not even one by one. That's great. Thank you very much. Good night.